what is the difference between tequila and mezcal? People are always trying to figure that out, and I'm here to tell you that it's really pretty simple. Let's just start with this, that all tequila is mezcal, but not all mezcal is tequila. Okay, while you ponder that, let's go back in history and talk about the agave plant, because that is the source of both tequila and mezcal. And in pre-Columbian times, they would cut off the pencas, the sort of spiky parts of the agave, leaving just the heart, or what's called the piña, and they would roast that, eat it just like that. You kind of chew on the fibers and get the sweetness out of it. Or in some cases, they would ferment it and make another beverage. Or they would take the sap out of the agave and ferment that and make pulque. So in pre-Columbian times, there was a lot of fermentation going on, but not a lot of distillation. Most people think there was none, though there is a little controversy about that subject. But let's just say that there was no distillation there, and then the Spaniards came along and they knew distillation. So they took this fermented, cooked agave and they distilled it, and they made what they called mezcal. So where does that word come from? It's actually about the metal, the Aztec word for the heart of the agave, and another Aztec word that I can't quite pronounce that means cooked. So it really focuses on the fact that this agave heart has been cooked and then, of course, fermented and then distilled. So if we sort of go forward in time, you could imagine that certain parts of Mexico grow a lot of agaves and some probably don't grow very many agaves, and some of them get known for their mezcal. Of course, the big names that we associate in tequila production actually came along pretty early. We've got the Cuervo people coming in the late 1700s, and then the Sauza family coming a century later. And they're proud of what they are producing in the state of Jalisco there. And in fact, it was the Sauza family that decided that this one agave that they could easily reproduce and plant in fields made the very best mezcal. And they got known for that. They got known for the mezcal that came from tequila, which eventually got shortened to just tequila. So that's why I say that all tequila is mezcal. It's a form of mezcal, but a very specific form of mezcal. But not all mezcal comes from tequila. In fact, when we think about mezcal most of the time, we're thinking about the one from Oaxaca, because Oaxaca produces more mezcal than any other state in Mexico. However, there are 9 states right now that can legally produce mezcal, and they have a DOC for that, and they can export it to the rest of the world and call it mezcal from this state or that state, Oaxaca or Durango or San Luis Potosí, whatever the 9 states are that are allowed to do that kind of thing. But let's go back into tequila. What happened there? It's a very interesting story, but they really got on the ball and decided to promote what they were doing, and they promoted it all over the world. And early on, we're talking a century or more ago, they got really famous by entering their tequila into all kinds of spirits competitions, and they win big. And so suddenly everybody thinks the only distillate from Mexico is going to be tequila. It's the only one worth drinking anyway, is going to be tequila. But it starts getting more and more narrowly focused, because then they start saying it's like you can't make tequila unless you're making it out of one agave, just one variety of agave. There's 200 forms of agave, different subspecies of agave. There's over 40 that are consistently made into mezcal, but in tequila, only one. And eventually the DOC, or the denomination of origin for tequila, includes that it can only be made from that one agave. The blue agave, it is a monocrop in that state and the other 4 states that can produce tequila, and they produce it in a very clean way instead of cooking it in a pit, cooking the hearts of the agave in a pit in the ground. as most mezcal is produced or cooked. They do it in autoclaves so that they can get that smoky, rustic quality out of it and keep a clean flavor in it. And then their stills aren't like the big clay stills that you would find in a place like Santa Catarina, Minas in Oaxaca, but instead these beautiful, shiny copper stills. But then everything sort of tastes alike, right? I mean, yeah, there's a little variation in where that blue agave is raised, but still there's going to be a similarity to all of the tequilas. So then they start introducing all kinds of aging things. And that's why when you see your tequila in the stores, you will see that it's in 4 different age categories. We've got the Blanco tequila, which is just basically right out of the still. It may be rested for a couple of months before they put it into the bottle. And then we've got the Reposado, the rested one, which is 2 to 12 months. So just a little bit more of that aging on it, but not enough to interfere with the flavor. Then you've got the Añejo, which is anything that's over that 12-month period, usually 1 to 3 years, and then a new category that's come out, which is the Extra Añejo, which is anything over 3 years old. So you can see when you start getting this kind of age on it that they're competing not in the world of mezcal, but in the world of those brown spirits, like whether it's a bourbon or a whiskey or a cognac, but it's all about the aging that comes into that. Now let's flip over to mezcal. We're going from a single variety of agave, the blue agave, to a whole host of different agaves. Up to 40 different agaves can be made or are regularly made into mezcal. And then everything about the process is very artisanal. Whereas there's a lot of big production in tequila, what we would call almost like factory manufacturing of tequila. Here it's all small families and it's all about the artisan process. You have great big stone ovens that are holes in the ground where you roast all of the agaves, and then you've got large wooden tanks where all of the fermentation happens, and then a whole host of different kinds of stills, from, yes, a copper still to the clay stills to wooden stills that they call the Filipino style stills. All of those are still utilized in the production of mezcal. So I think you can understand, just by listening to me talk about this now, that you're going to get a lot more variety of flavor in mezcal. And it's going to be more rustic. And it's going to be sort of take you to, I will say it'll take you to many, many different places, because it really is the expression of a place and a time and a group of people. Whereas tequila, beautiful as it is, exquisite as it can be, is more of an international flavor. So when you look at a bottle of mezcal, what do you look for? Well, number one, you'll probably want to look for the state that it comes from, because it can come from 9 different states and still be exported as mezcal. Second thing you're going to want to look for is the variety of agave that it's made out of. I've got one here, this Cuatro Vientos, and it says here Tepestate. And that is a variety of agave that produces this really sort of funky flavor. We often call it the sort of blue cheese flavor. I've got one here from the state of Durango. This, by the way, the Cuatro Vientos is from Oaxaca. This is from the state of Durango, and the variety of agave is listed on here as Duranguenses. So it's a special variety that just is grown in the state of Durango, and it's got this like really classic agave flavor, almost like the espadín that you find down in Oaxaca, the most common one down there. And then this is a very special bottle, and you can look here and see the word pechuga on here. It's another bottle from Oaxaca, but pechuga, when you read that word on there, it's just the word for breast in Spanish, but it means that it's a third distillation. All mezcal has to be, that's going to be exported, has to be distilled twice. But some very special mezcales are distilled the third time, and oftentimes with nuts and fruits and, well, yes, a pechuga de pollo, chicken breast hanging right in the middle of the still, which they say gives it this luscious texture. Not so much flavor, but luscious texture. That's what you need to know about working with mezcal, tasting mezcal. This is a lifelong pursuit. I will say, this you always want in your life. All of these tequilas you want in your life. But you will be exploring mezcal the rest of your life because there is so much variety. It is so fun. And there's nothing more fun than going on an expedition, say through Oaxaca, and stopping in the villages that are well known for their mezcal and tasting with the mezcaleros. Because oftentimes when you pick up the bottle, it'll have written on there the name of the person who has distilled that mezcal. You can't get anything more of the source than that. Have fun drinking tequila, have fun exploring mezcal. I know I certainly do.